This nation was founded on the principle that all men are created equal.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
That all men
are
created equal.
I'll tell you what freedom is to me. No fear. I mean, really, no fear.
Created equal.
From WDET in Detroit, this is Created Equal. I'm Stephen Henderson, and with me in the studio is Kerry Jr. II. He produces our show.
How you doing, Stephen?
Hey, Kerry. So one of the things I'm really interested in and kind of keenly interested in is the way in which kind of technology is moving so fast and changing the way we live in the world. And things like AI and facial recognition have had my attention for some time. I just think there's so many things that are kind of tied to that technology and moving fast into the future with that technology. And we're not really taking a breath to think about all of it the way we probably should.
Yeah. I mean, a few guesses for me would be when I think of if you're in the airport, like how fast do you want to get from security to your gate, right? They have that Clear scanner.
I am a member of Clear.
You have Clear, so they you have to scan your
scan
face,
my eyes,
your eyes.
And that's it. I
There we
walk
go.
through.
Another
I don't take my
biomarker.
shoes off or anything anymore.
They know everything about you now. They
Right,
know
but that's the
at this
thing,
point.
right? It's not just these cool things that you get to do, like pick your phone up and it knows your face and opens.
Yeah.
It's that all of that information about your face, about your eyes, is also being linked to all this other data that you're giving to social media companies, to places that you buy from on the internet. And when all of this is put together, it allows companies and in some cases government authorities to use it to do their jobs.
Right.
And that bumps up against, I think, real expectations people have about privacy and protection of their personal information. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And we've got a really smart, interesting guest. Kashmir Hill is a features writer for the New York Times. She covers privacy and artificial intelligence and surveillance. And she's the author of Your Face Belongs to Us. She's been thinking about this stuff for a long time and talking about that tension between the technology and all the exciting things that it allows us to do and this fear about personal privacy and personal information. And there are some really harrowing examples that she's kind of homed in on to talk about what the possibilities are here and how we should be better prepared to regulate this stuff and to kind of control how much of our information just kind of shoots around out there and gets connected with our photos and our eyes and our fingerprints. Kashmir Hill, it's really great to have you here. Welcome to Created Equal.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I want to start here. Artificial intelligence is moving really fast through our culture and kind of all over our society. It's in entertainment, of course. People's work is affected by it. Academia is trying to figure out where AI kind of fits in college and in K-12. And, of course, we're seeing it in policing as well. But you know, it's not new. And I guess I want to start with having you go back to a starting point. How has law enforcement been using AI, and when did this really make its way into the idea of policing these things?
Okay. So there's been interest from the police in using AI, going back decades now. I specifically have been focused on the use of facial recognition technology, which is something police started using in the early 2000s. But there are a lot of other tools that they use, such as predictive policing tools that are meant to tell you when crime is going to happen so you can send police to those areas. And that is, there's technological tools for doing that, but that's actually based on work that the NYPD started doing in the 1990s, where they would keep track of this on paper. They would say, okay, we've seen this subway station have crime every day for 3 weeks. Maybe we should definitely put officers there. And so you have AI tools that are listening for gunshots, and they're supposed to let police know when they hear it so that they can send patrol cars there. There's lots of different types of AI, but there's also a lot of questions around how well those tools work.
Yeah. So I want to inject a pop culture reference that I am quite fond of. So the 2002 film Minority Report, which is made by Steven Spielberg and stars Tom Cruise, I think is a really interesting rendering of policing in the future. Of course, it's the future rendered from 2002, so that's now almost 2 decades ago. But the use of facial recognition in that film, the use of I guess data tools to recognize people and identify people is kind of because it's a film and it's Hollywood, it's an extreme, but in some ways now it doesn't seem all that extreme. I mean, there's parts of the movie that are still not possible now and might seem ridiculous, but so much of it, I guess, doesn't. And so talk about how quickly this has moved, and how much more effective, I guess, these tools are, at least from the vantage point of the police today, than they were 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think Minority Report holds up in many ways.
Yeah.
In that case, people were tracked by their irises.
Right.
And so Tom
not even
Cruise
your whole face, right?
Yeah, not your whole face. So Tom Cruise is able to evade detection by swapping out his eyeballs. It's a little harder if you're being searched by face. You can't really switch your face around too much. The big thing that has changed in AI in the last decade is that AI has gotten more powerful and more accurate thanks to neural net technology. We basically have gotten better or computers have gotten better at AI because they're able to digest so much data and look for patterns in it. So when police first started using facial recognition in the early 2000s, it really didn't work that well. The computers struggled to be able to recognize that 2 different photos of somebody were the same person if, they had facial hair, or if they were looking away from the camera, or if the lighting was really different in 2 different photos. It was pretty good at, taking 2 mugshots and comparing them, or even 2 driver's license photos. So DMVs would use it to make sure there wasn't a fraudster who was trying to create 7 different identities for themselves. But it didn't work in other conditions, like identifying somebody off a surveillance video. You didn't really have much of a chance of doing that. But, the technology got more powerful. And I like to talk about facial recognition because it's such a specific example of AI, and it's kind of easy to wrap your head around.
Yeah. And talk about this neural net that you referenced. I'm not sure most people even know what that is or what it means.
Yeah, we call it neural network technology because it's supposed to work similar to the human brain, in that you have, different neurons with different tasks. And essentially the easy way to think of it is just really advanced pattern recognition. You give a computer a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of data, and it learns the best way to process it. So with face recognition, for example, computer scientists at Facebook were able to give computers thousands and thousands of photos in which people had tagged themselves. So, 2,000 different photos of a person on the beach, at a wedding, at a dim bar, looking away from the camera, looking up, wearing lots of different clothes, having different hairstyles. And the computer is able to look at those thousands of photos and figure out what information it needs about a face to recognize that person in all those different conditions. So thanks to kind of the explosion of photos, computers getting more powerful and being able to digest a lot of data, computers were able to more easily recognize human faces. And they're now probably better at facial recognition than humans are under the right circumstances. And yeah, so that is why we have these tools today like ChatGPT that seem so powerful, that seem intelligent, because computers, like with faces, they've gotten really good at analyzing words and patterns of words, and they're able to predict quite powerfully, what words should follow what other words.
I mean, you said something there that's really key, that that facial recognition is probably better at discerning who somebody is than the human brain is. In other words, that our minds and our eyes are not quite as trained, perhaps, as these computers are. But at the same time, I guess that's a little scary, right? Should we be comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how it's getting used. I love being able to open my iPhone with my face.
Right, the iPhone knows your face, right?
I like that it's faster going through the airport now and entering another country, because I can just put my passport down on a scanner, look into a camera, and face recognition search is made to see if my face print, my biometric face print, matches the one on the chip in my passport. I like those conveniences, but it is scary to think of how face recognition is getting deployed in some places. In Russia and China, they have face recognition running on their cameras in public spaces, that you can track somebody, you can find somebody. Very useful for if you have, a missing child and you're trying to find out where that person is, but it can also be used to identify protesters and punish them if the state doesn't like what they're protesting. Here in New York City, where I am right now, Madison Square Garden, an events venue, started using facial recognition technology to identify lawyers that worked at law firms that had sued it, so it could keep them from coming to Knicks games and Rangers games and Mariah Carey concerts, because the owner of Madison Square Garden just didn't like these lawyers. It was causing a lot of trouble for them. And so he said, you can't come in, unless you drop your suits against us. So this can really be a tool that can be wielded to track us, to potentially punish us. And yeah, there's a lot, it like with so many technologies, the question of whether it's good or bad is really in how it is deployed.
Yeah. And of course, the looming question behind all of this is the data that's associated with it, right? So I walk around and walk in front of cameras that take my picture, or I put pictures of myself on social media or elsewhere on the internet, and that all gets collected somewhere. And it doesn't get collected in isolation. It gets collected in connection to all of the other things that are publicly available or that I've made available about myself. And so this idea of the storage and use of that data, of not just your image and your likeness, but how that image and likeness connects to other information about you, is the thing that I think we all are most concerned with as this technology develops.
Yeah, I don't think that most of us, when we were using the internet, over the last 20 plus years or 5 plus years, depending on what your age is, we're realizing that every single image that we posted publicly to the internet might one day be associated with us. And that is what's happened, because we've had companies come along like Clearview AI. There's a couple of other ones that they've scraped the internet of as many photos as they can find. Clearview says it has 40 billion photos, and they have subjected them to a biometric search. And so, if your photo gets uploaded, it will show everywhere on the internet where your face appears. And so that might reveal your name, your social media profiles, and also maybe photos that you posted to the internet that are not affiliated with your name, or photos that other people have posted of you on the internet. And so it basically reorganizes the internet around our faces in a way that none of us saw coming. And I think for some people, depending on what you have out there, could be, alarming. And also, it for somebody who has that tool, it means the end of anonymity. I mean, they can find out anyone's identity if they have any kind of public presence on the internet.
Yeah. So when I talk to people about this, and especially if I talk to people who are not digital natives, in other words, people like me, my age, I'm in my early 50s. My mom, who is, of course, in her 80s, the first thing people say is, well, I didn't consent to all that. I didn't tell them they could use my face that way or my info that way. And, I'm just on social media to connect with my friends or with my family. And how can they then take all of that and do these other things with it? And of course, I always bring up the terms of use and service that you never read but always have to sign and things like that. But I do think there is culturally, I guess, a hurdle about the way in which all this has happened, that the expectation that so many people have is that there is still some sphere of personal privacy around your images and info about you. And I guess the truth is that doesn't exist in the way that we imagine, that this rapid advance of technology and our, passive consent almost to using it has eroded that sphere in a way that I'm not sure any of us would have not just predicted, but maybe even agreed to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to be outraged by this. And it's not just a matter of cultural expectations. It's about legal expectations. And for most of the U.S., we have pretty weak privacy laws. In Europe and other countries with stronger privacy laws that say you do need permission from somebody to use their personal information, Clearview AI has been declared illegal, that what they did was illegal. Places like France and Germany and Canada and Australia said, yeah, you need people's permission to put their faces into a biometric
like
database.
Express commission.
Express consent, yeah. And they said Clearview couldn't do business there, and they fined them. So yeah, it is very American, and there are within the United States some states that have some rules around this. One of them is Illinois. For people that live in Illinois, they have a law that says you can't use somebody's voice print or fingerprints or face print without their permission if you're a company, or face fines. And so, we are in a moment where technology has made things possible that weren't contemplated by a lot of the people that were making the laws. And I would say in most places, the law hasn't caught up with the technology. And I'm not sure that the law really matches what people's cultural, societal expectations are. And that's why we're having this huge debate about AI in our society right now. There are things that are technologically possible that maybe as a society, we don't want people to be doing.
Yeah. Okay, we need to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Kashmir Hill of the New York Times. Stay where you are. We'll be right back with more Created Equal. Okay, we're back with Created Equal from WDET in Detroit. I'm Stephen Henderson, and we're talking with Kashmir Hill, who is a features writer at the New York Times. She covers privacy, artificial intelligence, and surveillance. She's also the author of Your Face Belongs to Us. Kashmir, that's where I want to start the second part of this conversation. Your book, Your Face Belongs to Us, talks about Clearview AI and facial recognition technology. And in the first segment, we were beginning to talk about Clearview AI and that example. I want to dig a little more deeply into that. So let's talk about what Clearview AI is and what Clearview AI is actually selling and to whom they are selling it.
So Clearview AI is a New York-based startup, a pretty small company, and they offer a facial recognition tool where you can upload a photo of somebody, a stranger, and get, as results, photos of everywhere their face appears on the internet, along with a link to where the photo comes from. Clearview AI sells this tool to law enforcement and police departments so they can use it. Say they have a criminal suspect who was caught on camera, committing a crime, and they're trying to identify that person. This is a really useful tool for doing that.
And what's the potential, I guess, controversy with what they're doing?
Part of the controversy around Clearview is that they collected photos from all over the internet, from social media sites like Facebook and LinkedIn and Venmo, Instagram. Basically, if you use a social media site, you're probably in their database, as well as the rest of the public internet. And they collected 40 billion photos. And they didn't get anybody's consent to do that. And the tool that they've created really changes the notions of anonymity as we know it. It means that just from your face alone, your name can be known. Somebody can discover a lot of information about you. And so, people are upset about this. People are upset that Clearview AI, how they created their tool. And then there's this question about who should have access to it. When I first started writing about Clearview AI, they were primarily selling it to police, but their plan was to offer it to businesses and even to potentially offer it to individuals, according to one of their investors. And so as a society, the existence of Clearview AI, what they had done really raised this question for all of us of, do we want this to exist? Do we want it to be this easy to know who somebody is?
So I've got a question about the acquisition of these photos. You said that they got 40 billion images from social media and I guess maybe some other places on the internet. One of the questions that we all have about social media is what the product is in social media and how it's being handled. And a lot of people say, look, we're the product on social media. The information, the images, the data that we upload is what Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or whatever the platform is. That's what they are essentially selling, is that they're collecting all of this data in order to give it to other people who can use it for their businesses. Can you sort of, I guess, place Clearview AI in that chain of process? In other words, is this an example of Mark Zuckerberg, not to pick on him in particular, essentially selling what we give Facebook to someone else without knowing what the purpose is, and certainly without us knowing what the purpose of that is?
Yeah, I would say Facebook is culpable in a different way because Facebook didn't want Clearview AI doing this. Neither did LinkedIn or Venmo or any of these other sites, Google. And when I exposed the existence of Clearview AI, these companies actually sent Clearview AI cease and desist letter saying, hey, you're violating our terms of service. You're not supposed to be scraping images from our site. Please delete those images. Stop scraping us. They didn't go any further than that. They didn't sue Clearview AI, and Clearview AI continues to collect those photos. And part of the reason for that is maybe they thought they were going to lose. There's a lot of protections built into our law for scraping and accessing information as public on the internet. But also, they may not have wanted a precedent of going after a company for scraping, because that's what these companies have been doing to power their generative AI content. They're collecting lots of information from the public internet. I think where Facebook is actually culpable in this is, well, one, maybe not having better security measures in place to keep a company like Clearview AI from scraping your images, but establishing a precedent of, hey, everybody, let's put our photos on the internet alongside our names. They really built a great database to do something like this. So the culpability is a little different than what you would think. Facebook is kind of right along with their users in not liking what Clearview AI did.
Yeah. I'm thinking back now also to the testimony that, the social media CEOs were asked to give to Congress, about security and data and things like that. And this ongoing effort, I think it's probably accurately described in Congress for lawmakers to figure out not just how all this works, but what role the government should be playing in trying to either aid these companies in keeping information somewhat private, or in regulating these companies to prevent them from doing things that violate privacy. And I'm trying to suss out where a body like Congress could or should be intervening, I guess, in this. Like, is it in the regulation of something like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram? Is it in more explicitly dealing with companies like Clearview, or is it some combination, I guess, of the two?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to facial recognition specifically, there's questions that are general and specific, right? I think one question is, with AI, what should these companies be allowed to do? How should they be allowed to source the data? Should a company like Clearview AI be able to put all of our photos in their database? And, other countries, as I said earlier, like those in Europe have said, no, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. And here in the U.S., the answer has really been pretty much yes so far. With face recognition, there's a question of who should have access to this. Clearview, the company, has decided we're going to sell it to police. But there are other companies that are similar to Clearview AI who have public face search engines that anyone can use. So should the power of face recognition be restricted? Should companies be able to use it? Should we be able to use it? And I think an illustrative example from history about how we have gated a technology like this in the past is wiretapping and kind of eavesdropping, where in the 1950s and 1960s, we had this industry spring up of selling tiny little bugs where you could easily record a conversation, wiretapping equipment to listen in on phone lines. And at first, it was technology anyone could use. So private investigators were buying it to record people's home lines, trying to capture, evidence of infidelity in divorce cases. Companies were buying this equipment to tap their competitors. The police were just tapping conversations all the time. Richard Nixon, of course, was recording the conversations of everyone who came into the White House. And there was a real, consternation about this. People were very worried that you would never be able to have a private conversation again. And so lawmakers intervened. They prohibited and made illegal, secretly recording people. They said that only police could do wiretapping and they had to get a warrant to do it. So they put rules around it. And it really is, one expert from the ACLU, Jay Stanley, told me that these laws are the reason why these surveillance cameras that are all over the country, all over Detroit that you pass all the time, they're only recording your image and not audio, not your conversation, because these laws prohibited that, because we decided conversational privacy was important and we wanted to protect it. So we put limits on the technology. And so that is something that we could do with face recognition, with AI.
Right. Treat image like sound from a legal perspective. So I want to talk about Clearview AI's CEO, Juan Tan Tat, who has become something of, I guess, a lightning rod around the ethical dilemma here. What kind of argument is he making about what Clearview is doing, and I guess why he believes it should be okay?
The way he put it in one interview with me is, he said, Clearview AI is being used to catch pedophiles. It's not being used by pedophiles. And that's what that's how we think that facial recognition should be used. He compares what the company does to Google. He says, I'm not coming after your private Facebook photos or anything that's kind of hidden away. We just search what's public on the internet, photos that anyone can see. And we're just like Google, and Google lets you search the internet by name. We let you search the internet by face. And he has argued that, and the lawyers he's hired have argued that what they're doing in the U.S. is protected by the First Amendment, that, they're essentially just finding information and providing it to people that are seeking it.
And in a way, some of what he's arguing here is, look, if you don't have anything to hide, you got nothing to worry about. If you're not a pedophile, this doesn't this doesn't harm you. If you're not doing something you're not supposed to be doing, you don't have to be concerned. We hear that kind of argument a lot from people who who want to collect lots of information, kind of drag netting kinds of exercises. But I wonder what your answer is to something like that. If you don't have anything to hide, I guess, what do you have to fear?
I would say I've never met a single person in my life who doesn't have something to hide.
We all do, right?
I mean, if you really follow that argument to the end, it's just, you're okay being surveilled every minute of the day, and everybody knowing what you're doing. I just don't think there's a single person in the world who doesn't have, and it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just, I think we need spheres of privacy in life to be comfortable as human beings to live our lives. And it's funny, I don't hear that exact argument from the people around Clearview AI, like their supporters, their investors. I hear a slightly different version, which is that this technology will help us live in a world where people don't have anything to hide. They say, we want face recognition to be available to everyone because it'll make the world more accountable. You won't be rude to somebody on the street because they could take a picture of your face and know who you are, and that we'll have this kinder, nicer world if everybody's on the record, if they're able to be associated with their actions all the time. I don't tend to agree with that. Like, I think that's kind of a chilling version of the world. But that is one of the arguments they make about, actually, this is going to improve the world, not make it more dystopian.
Is there a possibility that something like Clearview AI could be more regulated soon by the U.S. government, or is this kind of a horse that's out of the barn?
I don't think the horse is out of the barn. I think it's very new. I think we're still figuring out what we're going to do about it. We have seen certain jurisdictions make rules about facial recognition. There's a few cities and states that have banned the use of facial recognition technology by police, at least temporarily, because they are worried about the effect it's going to have on civil liberties. They have questions about bias or how well the face recognition technology works. So no, I do think that we could make rules, again, referring back to the eavesdropping period in our history. We can set limits on who can use the technology. So I don't think the cart is out of the barn unless we all become nihilistic about privacy and would just resign ourselves to the world being the way it is.
Okay, we need to take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Kashmir Hill of the New York Times about artificial intelligence and surveillance and privacy. We'll be right back with more Created Equal. This is Created Equal from WDET in Detroit. I'm Stephen Henderson, and I'm really glad you've joined us. We've got Kashmir Hill with us. She's a features writer at the New York Times, covers privacy, artificial intelligence, and surveillance. She's also the author of Your Face Belongs to Us. We're talking about the prevalence, I guess, of AI technology and the way it is changing privacy and raising real questions about consent and lots of other issues in the sphere of free speech and the things that we are comfortable sharing with other people and that we may not be comfortable sharing. Okay, I want to turn this in this segment to law enforcement and specifically law enforcement here in the city of Detroit. As you say, police use tools like Clearview AI, which we were talking about in the previous segment, to search through photos that are scraped from social media sites and the internet. We are not unfamiliar with this here in the city of Detroit, and our familiarity with it is really tied to some very controversial incidents. A little more than 4 years ago, Detroit police wrongfully arrested Robert Williams. They identified him as the perpetrator in a crime, and it was not him. It just was the wrong person. The city had to settle for $300,000 in order to make that go away. We have new policies now with facial recognition, but I want to talk about those changes here in Detroit and whether they're enough, whether they really address the things that I guess went wrong for Robert Williams. There have been some other cases as well. So how was the Detroit Police Department using facial recognition technology in a way that led to Robert Williams' wrongful arrest? What were they doing wrong? Let's start there.
Yeah, so Detroit's been using facial recognition technology since 2017, and they're not using a tool like Clearview AI. They're limiting their searches to government photos. And so the Detroit Police Department searches a database of criminal mugshots, and then the Michigan State Police, who Detroit works with, searches a database of both mugshots and people's driver's license photos. And so, when a crime happens, they've got surveillance footage, they will sometimes take, that surveillance still and run it through the software and try to find out who that person is, if they can get a hit on a mugshot or driver's license photo. And the way that this technology works is that you upload an image, and that image needs to be high quality. If it's grainy, if it's low resolution, you're less likely to get reliable results. But you upload it, and then it will give you a bunch of results of possible matches. And in Robert Williams' case, I think there were over 200 different possible matches. And then there is a human being who looks at those, potential matches, and they decide which one is the person. So in the case of Robert Williams, there was a shoplifting of watches at a Shinola store in downtown Detroit. They had a surveillance still. They ran it, and Robert Williams was the 9th result. It was an expired old driver's license photo for him, and the facial recognition examiner said, "Yep, I think that's the person." They created what's called an investigative lead report and sent that to the detective who was looking into the case. The lead report does say, this is just a lead. It's not supposed to be probable cause for arrest. But in that case, they, had Robert Williams' photo. They did a photo lineup. They showed pictures of 6 different people to a security consultant who had watched the video of the theft. And she agreed with the computer that the person looked like Robert Williams. And basically, based on that alone, they showed up at Robert Williams's house, and after he was getting home from work, pulled in behind him, blocked him in, and arrested him on his front lawn in front of his wife and his 2 young daughters, and charged him with larceny. And he ended up spending a night in jail, having his fingerprints taken, his DNA taken, and then sat down for an interview with the detectives. And they just asked him, like, when's the last time you went to Shamola? And they showed him the 2 photographs of himself and his driver's license. And he said, "That's not me.
It's not me.
That's not me. He didn't even think he looked like the person. The only thing they had in common is that they were both large Black men." And even the detectives, he said, in the interview seemed to realize that they had the wrong guy, but he was still charged. He had to hire a lawyer. It was really traumatizing and expensive for him. And this has happened in Detroit 3 different times that we know of. The last time it happened with Portia Woodruff, who was 8 months pregnant, getting her kids ready for school when police showed up at her doorstep and charged her with carjacking. And again, taken in, questioned, charged. She ended up in the hospital that night because she was so stressed out and dehydrated from the day. So when police don't do enough investigating after getting that suggestion from the facial recognition technology, this can really go awry.
Yeah. So that description is, it's really harrowing when you think about it, right? How easily someone could be falsely identified under that kind of process. But as I said, DPD says, look, we're going to change the way we do this. Can you talk about what those policy changes were and whether they make sense, whether they're sufficient to prevent that kind of thing from happening?
Yeah, the Detroit police, when these incidents have happened, they've said the technology didn't get it wrong here, the humans did. They've really blamed their officers and said that they didn't do proper investigations. And so the new policies are really meant to fix the human problem here. And so the new policies say, you know what, when you get this facial recognition match, you cannot go and show that photo to an eyewitness and have that be enough evidence to go arrest somebody, because it's so easy for a human to make the same mistake. The same mistake as the computer. Like, this computer has gone through millions of photos and returned a photo of somebody that looks a lot like the suspect. And so you need more evidence to link this person to the crime beside the fact that they just look a lot like the person. So you need to pull their cell phone records and see, was their phone, at the scene of the crime? You need to go through their social media photos. Is there another photo of them wearing the same outfit as a criminal? Is there any kind of DNA evidence that links them to the crime? So one of the major pieces of the policy is you really need more evidence beyond this person just looks a lot like the person in order to go and arrest them.
And the ACLU has said this is a pretty good change, and that that DPD is at least headed in the right direction. But I guess the worry, or one of the worries, still is, basically this technology told the Detroit police that because Robert Williams was a large Black man, that they look like other large Black men, and there is a racial component to the technology. And when I say that, I don't mean something intentional, but really the collective weight of discrimination in every other part of our society shows up here in the way that it is determining who is whom, and how we determine who people are. Is what they're changing going to address that racial disparity?
Will it change the racial disparity? I mean, facial recognition technology for a long time was very flawed. It basically worked best on white men and less well on everybody else. Part of the reason for that is, well, we talked about at the top of the show that you create these you train these computers to see by feeding them images. And in the early days, some of the people working on this were mostly feeding it images of white people and particularly white men. And so that's what it was best at. They do train algorithms with a more diverse collection of information now. And so the algorithms have improved quite a bit. And, some of the best algorithms show very little bias at all. So the algorithms have gotten better, which is good, but we still have these disparate outcomes. So, I mean, if you improve the human part, the investigation of this, then you can overcome flaws in the software, arguably. Still, the ACLU, at the outcome of this case, ACLU represented Robert Williams. So they actually worked with the Detroit Police Department to establish these new rules. But even today, the ACLU says we'd rather see facial recognition technology be banned. But if they're going to use it, then we do think that police department should have these rules. And we think it's important that police departments have some rules because right now there really aren't any rules for how it should be used.
Right. So give me some reason to be hopeful about this, because I got to be honest, this conversation has me, a little chilled at not just what's going on, but the prospect of what's possible. I mean, this is moving so quickly, and the capabilities are developing in ways that, as we've been talking about, in some ways are unpredictable. We just don't know what will be possible. What, as a citizen, as someone who holds the rights of that citizenship dear, what is the thing that I should be holding on to that should make me sleep okay at night, thinking about, all of these things in the way that they're developing?
Where I'm hopeful is that this is our world. The world belongs to us. We are the humans that are living in it. And we can make decisions about what we want it to look like. We don't have to let what is technologically possible determine what the world looks like. And I'll point to cars, for example. Cars are capable of driving, 120, 140, depending on the car you drive, miles per hour. But we don't let people just beat around like at any velocity they want. We have rules. We have speed limits, and we can control and create guidelines for how the technology gets used. And we can harness the good, and discourage the bad use cases. And I am still hopeful we'll do it. It's part of why I wrote the book, is I want people to understand what the technology is capable of and kind of what we're heading towards if we want to steer it a different way here.
Okay. Kashmir Hill of the New York Times. It was really great to have you here for this conversation. Thanks so much for joining us on Created Equal.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so now I'm in the studio with one of our interns, Madison Ganzak, who had a lot to do with this episode. Madison, tell me how you came up with this idea.
I've always kind of been interested in AI and artificial intelligence in general, just facial recognition, because, it's all around us now. There's so much that you could talk about when it comes to it. And especially with facial recognition and how it's now being used in professional places. It's a big thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about, that it should be talked about more. And now that I know a lot more of how it's being used in professional places like policing, it's very interesting to know, and I'm really curious to see where it goes from here.
Yeah. What did you think of the things that Kashmir Hill told us we should be?
She's brilliant. From the second I talked to her, she's brilliant. And I think that she's right because honestly, when she was telling me the things that she did, it was scary. And she kind of gave me a lot of reassurance when I spoke to her during the pre-interview and when I was listening into the conversation that you guys had. Yes, it's scary. All the technology that's being developed, it's a scary process, but eventually you just gotta kind of learn to trust it.
Well, we also got to trust our leaders, especially in Washington, to rein some of this in, though,
Absolutely.
I think, and make sure that our personal privacy is not just trampled on by all this technology.
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
It's scary, but it's all happening for a reason.
Yeah. That'll do it for us on Created Equal. Created Equal is produced by Carrie Jr. II and David Lines. Our audio editing is done by Connor Anderson, and the music is by Sam Bobian. Created Equal is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University.